So I'm going to go ahead and start by logging in. And that, of course, is going to bring me to my main menu. Like I mentioned, the first step is to get our objects set up correctly. To get to the configuration page in the advanced settings, I'm going to start on the System Designer, which you can access over here from the top right corner. Now down at the bottom of the page is where we are going to see those advanced settings under the admin area header. Okay, clicking this link is restricted to system administrators. Non-system admins should be able to navigate to this page, but most of these links will not function without the proper permissions. Give this just a moment to load. Okay, so when you first click on the advanced settings, it takes you to the object permissions screen. We're not going to be working in here today. Instead, we're going to use the configuration tab. And within the configuration tab, we can see all of the packages that are set up within our bpm'online instance. So every bpm'online instance comes with a custom package by default. The out-of-the-box system settings point towards the custom package for all system customizations. This is something that can be changed through system settings, but I am going to go ahead and use the custom package for today's demonstration. You'll notice I have two new objects that I've placed into the custom package. So I mentioned this earlier that I went ahead and set up these objects ahead of time to save some time on today's call. But let's go ahead and take a look and see how they're set up. So I'm going to start with the equipment type object. Again, this is a lookup object that we're going to use in our installed equipment detail. If I go ahead and edit it, we can see how that was set up. Looking at the properties of the object itself, we can see I'm using the standard out-of-the-box prefix of USR. A lot of you may have changed this on your production systems. That's fine. You do need a prefix, though, anytime you're working with objects in bpm'online. So I very simply called this the equipment type. We can see again that it is in our custom package, and we're inheriting from the base lookup object. Okay. So what that inheritance does is it allows us to inherit the columns that come with that base object. Oh, I'm getting a chat that it's a little difficult to read, so I'm going to try to zoom in a bit. See if this is a little easier. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit easier for everybody to read. So when you do inherit from that base lookup object, you get the name and the description columns. Okay, it doesn't show them here, but you also get the ID column, the created on, the modified on, the created by, and the modified by are all tracked. Okay, if I wanted to add additional columns, I could simply by right-clicking on the columns and choosing the column or field type I'd like to add. That's not going to be necessary for this example, because I really just want to set up a very basic lookup that we can use in our custom detail object. Okay. If I was creating this for the first time, I could go ahead and save this object here, or I could go ahead and publish it to the database, which would be required if I wanted to register this lookup, which we'll see momentarily. Again, it's already been published, so I'm simply going to uncheck or close this tab. Go back to my package view. I'm a little too zoomed in, I think. And take a look at the detail object we've created, which again is titled Installed Equipment. So if I right-click on that and click on Edit, we'll see how I've set up this object. I'll open in a new tab, and there are some additional customizations we've done for this detail. So again, we're using the out-of-the-box USR prefix. We've named it Installed Equipment with a matching title of Installed Equipment. Again, it does go into our custom package, and we're using the base object. Okay, so when we're setting up a simple detail like we're doing here, you do want to inherit from that base object. What that's going to do is allow you to inherit those system columns I mentioned earlier. So we're going to have our ID, we're going to have our created on, our modified on, our created by, and our modified by. Okay. Everything below the inherited columns are custom columns I've added to use in this detail. Again, to add columns to any object in BPM Online, you simply right-click on the word columns, hover over the word add, and you can choose your column type. So I'm going to go ahead and run through what we've added here quickly. The very first one is a lookup type field. So this is going to use our new lookup we created, or we saw just a moment ago. You can see I've set this up as a lookup column, and I've pointed it towards the equipment type list. Okay. We're also going to be tracking serial numbers on our theoretical equipment. So I've set this up as a text 50 field. Nothing special here. It's titled serial number. Below that, we have two date type fields for install date and remove date. I've actually set install date to be a required field. We can see that change captured down here in the behavior list. I set it to required at the application level. Okay. These are just regular date fields, not date time, just an FYI. Install cost, we'll be tracking how much we charged for the install of this equipment. So this has been set up as a currency type field. Those of you who do the majority of your customizations in Section Wizard, I'm sure are aware there is no currency type field when you're using Section Wizard. Those certain types of fields can only be set up here on the object editing screen, and we see those types when I hover over that add. So we see currency. I don't believe date time is available through Section Wizard. I don't believe decimal is either. There's a number of fields in here that you can't do through the Section Wizard. We'll be tracking installed by information. So we want to tag a contact to each one of these new detail records. We do that by setting up a lookup to the contact section. Okay, so I specified the contact section as my target and named this lookup column install by. We have a text 250, I believe, to capture notes. Nothing special here. It's just a single line where we can capture some additional information about the detail records we're adding to the system. Okay. And then I mentioned this when I was talking about the slides, but it's absolutely crucial to have a lookup back to the section where you intend on placing your detail. So I've set up a lookup that points towards the account section, and this will be required when we're setting up the detail via Section Wizard, okay? This is how we establish a relationship back to a parent section. In this example, we're going to be doing a many-to-one type relationship. We can have many installed equipment records linked back to a single account record. So the next thing I want to do is set up our edit page that we can use on this new detail, okay? So I'm actually going to close this tab, and I'm going to go back to my System Designer. So we're back here on the System Designer page, which is represented by this little gear icon, and I'm going to find the Detail Wizard here in my list. So when I launch the Detail Wizard from the System Designer page, it assumes I'm wanting to create a new detail edit page. Works the same way with Section Wizard. So if I launch Section Wizard from the System Designer page, it assumes I want to create a new or a custom section, which is actually going to be the topic of our next user group in November. If I wanted to modify an existing section or an existing detail, I'd actually launch that from the proper page, okay? Since we are creating a new detail, we are going to go ahead and launch that from here. I'm going to just go ahead and click on Detail Wizard, and it's going to bring me to a very similar screen to what you see in Section Wizard. So first we need to set the properties for our detail. We can start by finding which object we're going to be using. We, of course, are going to be using our new installed equipment object, which I will specify here. And I will give it a matching title of installed equipment. Okay. From there, we can go ahead and set the edit page however we like using the Page tab. So I'll go ahead and click on the Page tab. Again, this works almost exactly like Section Wizard. Any column that's been set up ahead of time appears here in the existing columns header. I could also add new columns if I'd like. I did set up all my columns ahead of time directly within the object. So everything I need is going to appear here under existing columns. But if I forgot something for whatever reason, I could certainly add it here from the Detail Wizard, and it would modify my object for me, okay? So So let's go ahead and drag those columns out onto the screen. So I mentioned we are going to need to track equipment type. We're going to track the serial number. We're going to track who installed this piece of equipment, when it was installed, how much we charge for that install, if we have any additional notes, and then if that piece of equipment is later removed, we could track the date on which it was removed as well. Okay, so here we see those system columns, so our created by, created on, modified by, and modified on. None of that really needs to be on the edit page, as the system will capture that information automatically. I also do not need to put the account lookup on the page, as that will also be populated automatically. Okay. Just like in Section Wizard, this is drag and drop, so if I wanted to rearrange things or resize things, that's fine. I can also change some of the properties directly here within Detail Wizard by clicking on the little pencil icon. So the equipment type lookup, for example, I'm going to go ahead and set to a list type lookup rather than that pop-up window that uses the magnifying glass. Okay. The other thing you'll notice is install date is designated as a required field, as we did set that at the object level. So if we want to add an installed equipment record, it will force us to specify an install date. Details can have their own business rules and business processes that are launched from within those detail records. I'm not going to go into these today. They work pretty much the same way we see within Section Wizard, which I think most people are familiar with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. This is going to generate a schema for us in our custom package, which will be used as the edit page anytime we want to add a record to this new detail. This tab, like I mentioned, the next step is going to be to register and populate that lookup object we created. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the lookup section, which is also on the System Designer under System Setup. I am going to click the New Lookup button. Again, I have to specify my object, so we called that object the equipment type. I'm going to go ahead and give it a matching name, the equipment type lookup. Go ahead and save that. It now appears here in our lookup list. If I open that up, it'll give me an opportunity to create some entries for that lookup. So I can't recall what I used in my import. I think I just called them sample equipment A through D. So sample equipment A. Do my first entry. Go ahead and hit that check mark. Oops, excuse me, I should hit the new button. We'll do sample equipment B, sample equipment C, and sample equipment D. Okay. So now we have some new entries for our lookup, and we'll see how this works in just a moment. I can go ahead and close this. I'm actually done here in the lookup section. So like I mentioned earlier, if I launch the Section Wizard through the System Designer, the system assumes I want to create a new section or a custom section. It's not what we're going to be doing today. So instead, I'm going to navigate to the account section, because I know that's where I want this new detail to be placed, and access the Section Wizard using the View menu. Okay. Simply click on Open Section Wizard, and it will take me to the Accounts Section Wizard. Okay, so here we are at the Section Wizard for Accounts. The screen may look a tiny bit different than what some of you are used to. They have been making a lot of changes to the Section Wizard lately, and this demo instance is on the latest release, which is 7.12.4. That is a newer release than I've seen a lot of our customers' instances at. So if it does look different, nothing to worry about. I'm sure it'll be rolling out to you soon. Okay. Works pretty much the same way it always has, though. We have our general section settings up here at the top. We have our section pages displayed here. This is a little bit of a change. It used to have a page tab like we saw on the detail wizard. If we have multiple page layouts, those would all appear here. And we have the ability to set our mini pages as well as enable approvals. Out of the box, accounts just uses a single edit page. So I'm just simply going to click on the edit page button, and it's going to bring me to the page modifier. And this works almost exactly the same way as Detail Wizard. Now we're seeing all of our account columns. So any existing account column is displayed over here. We do have the ability to add new columns. You can also do page elements or widgets within Section Wizard, something we don't see within the Detail Wizard. And again, we're modifying our main account edit page. So all of the columns that we're using here on this demo instance are the out-of-the-box standard columns. I'm not going to make any changes. Instead, I'm just going to insert my new detail onto the page, and I'm just going to place it on the Account Info tab. Okay. So to do that, I'm simply going to click the New Detail button. It's going to ask me which detail we're going to be using. So we, of course, are going to be using our installed equipment that we just set up. The caption on the page is what it'll be labeled. I think installed equipment is just fine. The detail column is going to tell us how we link back to the parent section. So that is what we use the account lookup for. You guys recall we did not put the account lookup on the edit page. It's because when we click that plus button to add a new record, it's automatically going to fill that out for us based on the account we were in when we created that new detail record. And then the object column is how we're going to link detail records back to accounts. We're going to be doing that through the ID. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. What that'll do is place the detail down here at the bottom of my detail list. Just going to move it up on the screen a little bit. I'll go ahead and place it right, let's say, right in between communication options and the account address detail. Okay, so that's the only change I need to make for now. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main section wizard screen and then go ahead and save these changes. Like I said, the next step is I want to add some additional equipment records, and I'm going to do that by importing the Excel file I prepared earlier. The import tool is, of course, found on the System Designer as well. Right here under the Import and Integration header. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Data Import. A lot of people don't realize that you can import to detail objects just like you would to section objects. So when you come to the data import tool, we see we could import to contacts, we could import to accounts, of course, or we can simply click the other button, and that would allow us to specify any object in the system. So this could be a section that's not listed, like leads or opportunities. This could be a detail, like the installed equipment or account address or communication options. You can also import to lookup objects, just as an FYI. So we are going to be looking for installed equipment. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick search. Select that object. And then I'm going to need to select my file. So again, I prepared this file earlier. It is a simple Excel file, aptly titled the Install Equipment Import. I'm going to go ahead and hit Next, and that's going to allow me to set my mappings. Again, because I set the header row to match the column names in bpm'online, it went ahead and mapped everything for me. Your column names or your header row does not need to match. You will always have an opportunity to manually adjust these mappings. It's just easier, in my opinion, if you do know the column names, to set it as part of your header. As we can see, it took care of everything for us. If for some reason something was not set correctly, for example, the remove date, it would appear this way and ask me to specify which column that goes to. I can simply do that by clicking on the select column and then choosing which field or column that column in Excel should be mapped to. Okay. The next page is going to allow us to check for duplicates as these records are being loaded. I know these are all unique records, so I'm not going to mark anything for a duplicate search. If I wanted to, for example, duplicate search on accounts, it would exclude any record that had a matching account to one of the other records in my list. Okay. So let's go ahead and start the data import. There's only a handful of records, so it should just take a few seconds. Once it starts, it should go through those pretty quickly, and it should be able to load all 50 records without an issue. All right. Looks like it did load all 50 records, which is good. So I can go ahead and close this. Now let's go ahead and check some of these quickly. One of the accounts I imported records to was FastWorks. So if we go ahead and look at that, we should see a handful of installed equipment records, which we do. If I pulled this sheet up, we would see that that does indeed match the entries I had on my data import file, which is good. So we can go ahead now and set up a couple dashboards to report off this information. Like I mentioned earlier, the installed equipment list view is only really contained within parent records, parent account records in this instance. So there's no way, at least at the moment, to see a list of all of my installed equipment because we have set that up as a detail rather than a section, okay? I also mentioned earlier that in November, we're going to be doing a user group on how to create custom sections. So primary section objects like account, contact, leads, opportunities, those can be customized, or you can set up as many as you'd like as well. Those obviously do have their own list views, but when we are setting up a detail, the only way to view those list views is either through, a related record or a list type dashboard. So as most of you are aware, there are many places to set up dashboards within bpm'online. We could set them up within the dashboard section, or we could set those up within the different dashboard pages within one of the primary sections. I'm going to go ahead and build these within the account section, because I think that's where they're most relevant. And this will allow us to take advantage of the built-in account filtration options as well. So let's go ahead and click on the dashboard page. To start, I'm going to create a new dashboard tab. Let's go ahead and call that the Installed Equipment Analytics. And we'll start with a list view. So the example I used in my slides was a listing of all of the equipment that have been installed this month. Go ahead and title that Equipment Installed in the Current Month. How about? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set the object to be our installed equipment. We're going to choose which columns we want to be displayed as part of this list. So this is going to be separate from the detail list columns we set earlier. So let's see the account name. Let's see what type of equipment it was. We'll see who installed it. Oh, excuse me. Installed by. I can't type, I apologize. We will go ahead and see that cost, I suppose. And let's see the install date. Okay. On the display options, we'll have some additional criteria. So let's say we want to see, 20 records in descending order. We're going to be sorting by their account, so they'll all appear grouped by account. And as we've titled this list, equipment installed in the current month, I am going to go ahead and create a filter for this dashboard based on the install date. And we'll set that to the current month. Okay, so how are we associating with the section data? We're actually going to associate that using the accounts ID value. And this is what's going to allow us to take advantage of the filtration functionality that's built into the account section. Okay, you can set a style on list type dashboards. It doesn't change much, to be honest with you. I think it really only controls the little colored bar that appears next to your list. I'll go ahead and set that to orange. I believe that's everything we're going to need for this example. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. It will need to be resized. I think I'll go ahead and set it to the full width. We'll give it some height. Now, if I go ahead and save this, we should see our list. And it is displaying all of our equipment that has been installed this month. It's being sorted by account in descending order, just like we set. Okay? And it is correctly displaying our top 20 records. So that looks good to me. I'll run through one more quick example, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end of the presentation. So another thing I'd like to see is a chart that summarizes some information about this installed equipment. So I'm simply going to edit the tab I set up just a moment ago. And let's go ahead and do a chart type dashboard. We're going to be displaying the installed equipment, of course. Let's do an average based on the install cost. And we're going to group off of the install date. So this will give us an idea of what the average install cost is based on the month they were installed. So we're going to format that using month and year. Go ahead and give this a title. Average install cost by month. I think this would look a little bit nicer as a column chart. Okay. Maybe this would be better as a bar chart, actually. That looks a little better. I'm going to go ahead and set a filter to be for the current year. Not actually going to change anything because I only have records that are for the current year. But that is a fairly common question. We are going to associate this by the related accounts ID, of course. And I can go ahead and set the formatting if I'd like. Go ahead and save this. And that would need to be resized as well. All right, now I can go ahead and save. And we see that chart down here at the bottom of the screen. So now we can track, how much we're charging for install per month, as well as seeing all of the equipment that was installed for the current month.